Hi guys, good evening. Before I sort of give you an intro of my news guest, I want to give you sort of his resume. It's super impressive, and I think a lot of us young adults will be really impressed of how much he's done in just the short amount of years. He's relatively young, 24-year-old student filmmaker, currently at SFU Woodward's film program. He's gotten raving reviews for his films from organizations and associations like the Independent Critic, Film Pulse, Rogue Cinema for his work, and he's won multiple awards, including one at the Canadian International Film Festival for Rising Star. I'm not sure if some of you guys have heard his latest films, but please note them down because they're worth seeing. He's got Generation Y, Choch, Fragments, and Jerk, and his latest feature film, Spaces and Reservations. So, hi, Brendan.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I didn't even say your name. Brendan Prost is here.
It is, yes.
Yes. And how do we know each other, Brendan?
We know each other from our experience at the Gateway Theater, where Ashley was the finest communications intern in Gateway history.
Yeah, and you're a box office manager. Mm-hmm. So it's super impressive because honestly, like working together, I knew how much work you did at Gateway Theater, but I knew you were a student as well, but I didn't know how much independent filmmaking you did and how many projects you actually took on your own. So looking at your site online, because I know you've got a lot of information about your movies and films, you're described as an auteur filmmaker, A-U-T-E-U-R. I need to spell it out because I actually had to look it up. Can you explain that and how that's important to you as a filmmaker?
Well, for like film snobs, there's something called the auteur theory in film theory, and it's just basically a way of thinking about films. But I describe myself as an auteur because I think my kind of individual authorship is important in like the meaning of my films. The fact that my films are very personal and are kind of created and driven almost like solely by me. I'm the writer and the director and the producer and often the cinematographer on a lot of my projects. So the fact that I think it's conceived of and carried out by kind of one person and an individual is important, especially in film, when people are used to seeing commercial films that are made by committee, made in enormous environments with huge groups of people. I think I appreciate and I value films that are made by individuals, and yeah, so I think it's just how to think about the films, I think.
No, I think that's really important. Being a film artist, especially, you're competing against large commercial films, and I know, like, speaking to you, you like to keep a really honest portrayal of your films, and it's something you mentioned, it's not something we see a lot in mainstream filmmaking, so, auteur, yeah, it's a great term, really important for filmmakers like you. Another term that I read on your website is micro-budget film. So I'm assuming it's having to do something financially. So can you explain why a lot of your films are termed a micro budget and how that's relevant?
Absolutely, yeah. Micro budget in the film community means different things depending on who you're talking to. For instance, Telefilm Canada has something called the micro budget film program, which they give out grants of $50,000 to projects. And in the spectrum in the history of movie making, $50,000 is really not very much to make a film.
Right.
But when I speak of micro budget, my projects are almost exclusively made for like budgets under like $5,000. They're extremely affordable. I write them so that I can know that I can make them for my own personal finances.
Right.
Micro budget for me is not just the amount of money, but it's where the money comes from, and it comes from my pockets and my personal savings. And so I think it's just important. Like when I think of micro budget, I associate it with like it's non-commercial, it's non-profit, it's people who are making art of any kind, films in my case, because, for no other reason than because they want to share something and they enjoy the art and they like to make things.
Right. And knowing that you're a full-time employee, full-time student, so how hard or difficult is it balancing that? Because micro-budget films usually imply that you are involved in every entity of the filmmaking, so that's cinematography, editing, writing, promotions. So how do you balance that? Because I know we probably have a lot of listeners out there who are young filmmakers, so how do you do it? I
balance it very poorly.
What I see, I think you managed? Yeah.
It's an incredible challenge. I used to be more successful at it by kind of compartmentalizing my projects a lot more. So I would do one thing, and then I would finish it, and I would tackle something else. In the last year, I've been like embroiled in kind of 3 projects at once, which has been very difficult. But it's basically, I treat my projects like I do, not in terms of like my attitude towards them, but in how I tackle the work that I need to do to them. I tackle them as a job. I set myself time, every week, a certain amount of hours to get certain things done. I have deadlines for myself, and I just make sure that I meet them. And I mean, the hardest things and the biggest challenges are easiest to overcome if you have a huge imperative to make it happen. And it's really important for me to be able to like make these projects and to finish them, and so I couldn't not do them, if that makes sense.
No, totally understood. And is there a big difference? Because I know you're originally from Calgary, right? Is there a big difference producing films like this in big cities like Vancouver? Does it make it harder? Does it make it easier for your schedule?
I think it's easier in the sense that there's a greater pool of talent here to pull from, and that's not because Calgary's not full of talented people, but because there's just more people in Vancouver who are involved in filmmaking. Yeah. So there are more actors who you can audition and more filmmakers who you can work with and collaborate with, and musicians to work with. So that is a tremendous collaborative opportunity. But it's a little more challenging in the sense that because there are more people working here, it's harder to kind of poke your head out through the noise, all the other media creators in town, and it was a little easier in Calgary to be noticed.
Okay. So just on that note, we're going to go to part 2, but before we do that, we've got a song from Days on Mars titled Lost Song. It's Y57 Media, Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM.
What did you expect? What happened? Like, I don't want to stop just because it's hard.
You don't seem to be enjoying yourself.
Well, I'm trying to, I feel like I'm slowing you down, and I'm trying to keep up with you. I just think that I'm just so totally absent in this relationship that I wouldn't notice you were liking somebody.
And we're back on Y57 Media, Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFR 100.5 FM. For those of you who are wondering what that little clip was, that was a clip from the latest film by filmmaker Brendan Prost, Spaces and Reservations. And actually, going off on that, I actually wanted to talk about your latest feature film. Maybe give our listeners a little bit about the synopsis and premise of the movie.
Yeah, basically the film is about 2 different emotional experiences of losing someone you love and who is close to you, kind of feeling them drift away and slowly separating from them, and kind of feeling your relationship coming to a sudden and abrupt and kind of emotionally violent end. And so basically it follows the story of a couple who've been together for quite a while who beginning to experience like a malaise in their relationship, and even though on the surface everything seems to be fine, they can feel like a lack of intimacy and fire and life and energy in the relationship that obviously was once there. And as they're slowly drifting apart, they both fall for other people, and their relationships with these other people bring the relationship to a very abrupt and very like sudden and volatile ending. And through this volatility, through all like this energy of like a breakup, they're brought back together again and are reminded of all the intimacy that they were missing during their malaise, because like a breakup with somebody is such an intimate and such like an emotionally volatile thing. It's kind of the passion that they were missing while they were drifting apart. So,
and even looking at the film and the characters, I noticed they are relatively young adults, probably around the same age demographic as our listeners. So in your press kit statement, you are pretty honest about the inspiration of this film. It's about a tumultuous yet hopeful relationship faced with infidelity and insecurities. Was this film somewhat autobiographical? Was your inspiration pulled from personal experience?
The film was inspired by 2 different emotional experiences I had at different times in my life with 2 very different people. And it was inspired by kind of like I was really struggling with being able to comprehend and understand these experiences and how they were interrelated and yet really different, and how my memory of one colored my behavior in the latter, and how my experiences after in the latter event changed my memory of the first one. So it was about like trying to come to terms with those things and trying to understand something to me that was really hard and really unfathomable, that was really making it very hard for me to move forward and have new relationships and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't say that it's autobiographical. Most of my films are not autobiographical. They're like emotionally analogous. The characters experience things that I really relate to and I really respond to, but the literal circumstances of what happens in this, like in the story and in the plot, and the characters themselves are not really they're not people that I know. I'm not the main characters.
Not actual
in the film.
experience. It's more from a self-reflection from the combined both experience, right?
Exactly.
And that's kind of translated into the film itself.
And Spaces is the most raw and the most candid and the most literal, if you could say so, of my projects so far. But it's not autobiographical.
And it's also partially improvised, as it's listed on your website. Can you explain what partially improvised is? Because for me, like, films are mostly scripted. So is that an artistic choice, and why did you decide to make it that way?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's a lot of kind of mystery around like improvisation and how directors and actors work in an improvised way. Basically, my interest in improvisation stems from my need to create performances that are natural, feel spontaneous, and very like lifelike and are filled with like emotional energy, which that involves the contribution of actors and is full of surprises. Right. So all of my recent projects have worked with improvisation in different ways. Choch was almost entirely improvised around a very short and very succinct script. Spaces was a very detailed script, and the way that we included improvisation was that the connecting lines between what was written on the page was very loose. Okay. So I invited the actors to meander through the course of a scene. So they would set the pace, and they would add things as they went along, and they would colloquialize the lines. But we did work from a very, very full and very detailed script. So it's not improvised in the sense that a Mike Leigh film is like fully improvised and there is no script, and it's not improvised in the sense like a John Cassavetes film is improvised. It's kind of your own blend, and you come up with what works for the film and the actors that you're working with. Yeah,
because it is a collaborative experience between you and the actors, and as much as you do have creative power over it, it's like when you're collaborating with others, they might provide a creative sort of new element to it that you didn't know or have before, so that's really important. That's awesome. Again, so everyone who's listening, this is Spaces and Reservations. This is Brendan Prost's latest feature film. And I know you're going on a national tour to promote it. Can you talk about a little bit what you're doing and where you'll be at?
Absolutely, yeah. We're still formulating the exact dates, but basically we're doing a tour of the film where instead of doing the conventional film festival route, we're programming and booking dates for the films in Vancouver and Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Toronto, and Victoria, all on our own. And we'll be driving the film cross-country and having single-night screenings and being in town a week beforehand to introduce people to the film, hand out postcards, talk to the local media, and wonderful co-op stations like yourself.
Keeping the dream alive.
And it's basically just an effort to share it with people. We just want people to see it, and we just want to expose it to them. So people in Vancouver are going to have an opportunity to see the film very, very soon.
Yeah. And speaking as someone, like, I don't have a lot of exposure to independent films, but, like, seeing what I saw from your projects alone, it's great. It's honest. It's an awesome portrayal. It's very unique. It's different and distinct from a lot of mainstream media that we are exposed to. So I definitely, again, I encourage our listeners to connect with Brendan. So how can they do that? How can they probably connect with you or capture the film? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. If people want to find out more about Spaces and Reservations, we have a website with 2 great trailers, and we're going to have a bunch of new video content soon, including interviews with the actors and behind the scenes footage and that sort of thing. And it's at spacesfilm.com. So SPACES FILM.com, spacesfilm.com. And the best thing for people to do is discover the content that we have available and to share it with people if they think it looks cool. We also have an audience list that we're building, so people can request a screening just by giving us their name and their email address and what city they would want to see the movie in. And just like liking our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/spacesfilm, you can even add me as your friend, and you can tell me that you're interested in seeing the film. It will make my day. So you can also check out my website, which is brendanprost.com.
Awesome. And thanks again so much, Brendan, for coming down to the studio and talking about your films and being a filmmaker, and of course your latest feature film, Spaces and Reservations. We're going to leave off with the latest from Patchwork, the song Cigarettes, at Y57 Media, Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFR 100.5 FM.
Thanks, Ashley.